Greetings, everybody. I'm back again to speak with you about jazz records again. And before I start, I want to thank you all for your encouragement, your kindness. The responses to what we've been doing has been wonderful. I do this from my heart. I do it because I enjoy it, and I want to share a lifetime of information, gratitude that I have, that I've been exposed to so much beauty in my life. So I'm just letting you guys be aware of that beauty so that you can find your own course along the way. In line with that is the remarkable Andrew Hill, a seminal pianist from the 1950s to late 1960s. I mean, he went beyond that, obviously, but his noticeable period is late 50s to late 1960s. By the time he's left Chicago, incubating as a classical musician, classically trained musician, analogous to, say, Herbie Hancock out of the Chicago scene, we have prodigious talent here that has taken the original influences of Art Tatum and Bud Powell and has transmuted them into a next level of development with Cecil Taylor, Thelonious Monk, and Bill Evans to become remarkably totally his own man. I think what allows this to happen beyond their harmonic information, their rhythmic perspective is Anton Webern and Edgar Varese. I believe that the second Viennese school and the developments of early American 20th century avant-garde coming from Europe informed this musician in a significant way. That said, the beauty in this record is the collision between a musician who is steeped completely in the tradition and I don't really believe was informed by the classical elements, and that being Roy Haynes, one of my favorite drummers. And to me, this is one of my favorite records that captures Roy, both sound-wise and energetically, at his optimum. So here, a pianist with two bass players, the bass playing dual roles of drone, keeping a really low anchored back end, and then the melodic and harmonic information informing at the middle range, kind of connecting the bottom to the top with this record. It makes it a very interesting listen. Roy just, there's a snap, crackle, and pop that he was known for that the engineer just catches so beautifully that all you folks will be entranced by if you're into rhythm, if you're into drummers, if you're just, into the world of jazz. So from one side of the world to the next, Andrew Hill coming more from the avant-garde side of things, we have a pianist, Freddie, who cut his teeth on beat-up upright pianos, primarily self-taught, spent 1 month at the Greenwich House of Music. After 6 months of dallying with the piano, after 1 month of training, went out on his own to figure it out, started rubbing elbows with a lot of wonderful musicians in Manhattan to build himself into a beyond journeyman, very solid, and to me semi-legendary pianist of this era. Freddie is known primarily as the composer of The Connection, the Jack Gelber play, discussing the street life in Manhattan, the drug culture of that period, and the dark side of what life was about in the oppressive post-war era. But Freddie is far more than that composer. He's known primarily for that, but this record on Blue Note here, to me, is the record that people should be taking a closer look at. These records are typically called sleeper records for the aficionado, but for me it's a special record because it's about the feeling that this music projects during this session. It is not a masterpiece record, but it is just 5 musicians, Jackie McLean, Tina Brooks, the rhythm section, and the pianist Freddie, coming together to make a magical record. And the front line, how they work together, Tina Brooks playing really beautifully on this record as well, very direct, powerful soloing on tenor. McLean finally cutting his teeth in the post-Charlie Parker influence period of finding his own voice, is declamatory in his playing. So this record is just, it's a very inspirational record. It's a joyous record. It's a joyous record that just basically transcends, the technical aspects of what jazz, what we perceive jazz to be about. There is something so elemental within all the ingredients that go into becoming a jazz musician that you can't put into words, and this type of record is like that. So 1959, Blue Note, Shades of Red, Freddie Red, a record that should definitely be on the radar. Check it out. So moving back into guitar territory, folks, I'd like to share with you a guitarist who just doesn't seem to get as much notice as he should, and that is Rene Thomas. Rene came out of Belgium, developed within the French, the Parisian jazz scene, into one of the great jazz guitarists of his era. Interestingly enough, American guitarists who would go to Paris in the early to mid 1950s, i.e. Jimmy Rene, they would cut teeth with this guy. I think maybe might have been a bit surprised, because not only is Rene Thomas playing a Charlie Christian model guitar, which was his most treasured and cherished possession in his whole life, but this guy lived the life. He is a collision between the romance of the European tradition, but a deep imbued feeling for the blues and the Oklahoma roots of Charlie Christian. So whereas Barney Kessel translates differently as an extension to Charlie Christian than Rene Thomas would, because of course Barney is actually from Oklahoma and actually did meet Charlie Christian, this person here is coming from a different perspective because his experiences in life are different. So again, everyone's truth being what it is, the manifestation is beautiful and necessitates us, collectors, having to find these different flavors that are so relevant to life. And so in a sense, what I'm saying is it kind of justifies the fact that some of us have thousands of records. There may be a reason why we do. And putting it in perspective, millions of records have been made, and there are thousands that probably could be on the radar depending on our tastes. But then if we strip it down to the thousands that really matter, there are unique records that have perspective based on our information, based on our worldview, based on our DNA, whatever it is, to allow us to have a sensitivity towards things like this. So pretty much everything on Barclay or any of the European labels that Rene Thomas did is of a very, very high caliber. Sonny Rollins once said his favorite guitarist was Rene Thomas, and that's saying something, because Sonny was obviously cutting his teeth with Jim Hall, Barney Kessel. The Contemporary Leaders record on Contemporary, Kessel is playing beautifully on that record. So it says a lot that Rollins is placing him in such high regard. Keep your eye out for Rene Thomas. The Jazzland record is a record that you could find relatively easily with J.R. Montrose on tenor, and that's a very nice record. It's an earlier, not quite real early record, but it's like a 1960 record, and it's right in the wheelhouse of Rene Thomas.